Welcome to the ChangeMakers podcast, brought to you by the Lipscomb Pitts Breakfast Club. This show shares personal stories and insight from those who are giving back and making a difference, so we can learn and do the same. We cover life lessons, business advice, passion, and purpose. Now, here's our host, Jeremy Park.
Welcome to the ChangeMakers podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We get to talk to someone who's the president and CEO of ServiceMaster by Stratos, who's making a huge difference right here in the Mid-South. Stacy McCall, how are you doing?
I'm doing well today, Jeremy. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So the fun of this show is we get to talk about your heart, your service, your community service. But let's start with you as a child growing up in the Mississippi Delta. Give us a little bit of your background and where you grew up and a little bit about your childhood.
Well, Jeremy, I'm from Greenwood, Mississippi, the heart of the Mississippi Delta. And I must say, I fit the bill. I walked around barefooted, loved to be outdoors, climb trees, get poison ivy, the whole 9 yards. And I got to enjoy the freedoms of traveling around town on a bicycle or on foot, and there were no boundaries. So I loved it. It was a child's dream.
And talk about your parents. Give me an idea what your parents were like.
My dad was with the Chamber of Commerce, and we moved a couple of times, but always went back to Greenwood. And my mother was an English teacher, so she had thousands of students go through her classrooms in the years that she taught.
So did you have a chance in terms of your grammar and making sure that you spell everything correctly and your sentences were properly structured?
Oh, that's an understatement. There was a 25-cent jar at home, and when I got married, I had to have her proofread my thank you notes that went to all of her friends.
Nice. When you look back, I mean, growing up, obviously in that environment where freedom, was accessible, where you could get on the bike, you could ride anywhere, you could climb trees, as you said, you could play outside. Talk about some of the lessons of just adventure and exploring, because I've got to imagine that played a big role in your college experience and just setting the foundation for where you are today.
It gave a lot of exposure being able to do that in a small town environment. So things weren't off limits. You traveled across town and you made decisions about, do I go left or right? Do I cross the big highway? Do I play in the rivers when mom says that that's not a good idea? It just gave us the ability to make decisions early in life. And we weren't in a box. We weren't structured. We had all of those freedoms of what to do with our time and how to use it. And that, I think, was a life lesson for me very early.
Talk about structure. I mean, obviously, when you talk about a teacher, when you talk about Chamber of Commerce, understanding business, understanding, obviously, education, I can imagine there was a lot of structure, though, with that freedom.
Oh, yes. We understood the value of time. We understood what it meant to give your best. My parents never had to say anything about grades. It was just always understood. Oh, Stacy, yes, you're talking about being a nurse, but what about a doctor? Expand your horizons. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do outside of the boundaries in which you are operating right now? So they wanted us to discover the world, and so they pushed. And my mother never saw restrictions. And I might step out and do things that were not necessarily socially acceptable at the time, but she never put the boundaries. She just let me discover it on my own. Of course, we're talking things within safe bounds. But she never said, you can't do this. She said, oh, well, maybe so. What would you do if you could? So it was great that she and my father provided that opportunity for us to see beyond where we were at the time.
And so you go to school and eventually become a petroleum engineer. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So talk about that adventure.
Well, I had an opportunity in going to Mississippi State to get to choose petroleum engineering, which was really strange, and they have discontinued it and now started it back at the university. But I loved rocks, and I decided, well, if you like rocks, then you should probably enjoy something like petroleum engineering. And I enjoyed the science side of it, but it was sort of country come to town. I had a lot to learn about a major university, and so as I progressed through school, got to co-op where I worked a semester and went to school a semester. And I think that's when my horizons really started expanding, because I went from a Mississippi Delta town to Starkville, Mississippi, to then my first job co-oping when I was working in school was to go to Dallas, Texas and work for Diamond Shamrock. Boy, you're talking about a fish out of water.
That's a big city.
It was big city. I thought I could drive to work downtown Dallas when I first started, and the buses ran over me first couple of times, and I said, okay, mass transportation is my friend, and it started from there. And so it was really great. And then after Dallas, I co-opted again in Amarillo, Texas, which gave me a whole different look of the world. So slowly but surely, that opportunity to be a petroleum engineer made such a difference in my life, and I ended up in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and I worked for Offshore Mobil Oil at the time. It's ExxonMobil now, but I normally worked 100 miles offshore in production platforms, and
wow,
that was really interesting for me.
So did it ever hit you that you're working in a very male-dominated industry?
And when I was in school, I noticed that I was one of the few females in classes, but it really didn't hit me until I went into the work environment. And the first time that I was flown offshore on that platform or 100 miles outside of anywhere, I realized that I was lucky if the cook was a female. And I was the only one out on the platforms.
Now, how did that change the way you handled people? Because obviously, if you're the only female on an offshore rig, so to speak, and I've got to imagine there's probably hundreds of guys, how did that change the way you dealt with people, the way you toughened up maybe? I mean, did you change?
Yes, in a way I did. I was always sensitive to people, but once I got offshore, I knew that I had to listen to those that I was with. And it wasn't book sense, it was common sense, and you needed it with Mother Nature. And so when I got offshore, I wasn't sitting in an office like you could when you were an engineer. I was helping trip pipe in the hole. I was on the floor. If they were on the floor 18 hours, I was on the floor 18 hours. If they were involved I was involved in every aspect of it because I had to prove my worth. I had to be one of the guys, and you didn't do it by sitting in an office and relying on your books. So it made a difference in how I learned to interact with a lot of different types of people too in that environment.
When you have storms and all sorts of things that you get to experience, did you enjoy that part? Was that a frightening experience? I mean, what was that like in terms of being offshore? Because you see all the storms in the movies and the ships and the things where they're casting around. Obviously, it's a little different, but what was that like?
One of the first experiences I had was I was working on a production platform that had working wells. So they were producing gas. We were in a gas area. Well, one night, the wells went to flare. And when that happened, we lost all of our lighting and it went to emergency lighting, but there was a pause. Well, to hear a well go to a flare, it's just like an unbelievable roar. Well, I just stood there, and all of a sudden I felt people running past me. By the time the lights came back on the rig, some of the workers were all the way down 3 flights down to the water ready to jump in, and I was just standing there going, I'm not so sure about this.
Wow.
But it was a learning experience, and I had the opportunity, and I have sort of an adventurous spirit that I don't realize I'm in the middle of something potentially dangerous until after I'm out of it again. And then I reflect back on it and go, that might have not have been the smartest thing in the world for you to do at that particular time, Stacy.
That's where you realize, wow, I'm really lucky to be alive.
That's right.
So how in the world do you go from that to now being president and CEO of ServiceMaster by Stratos, which is a contract janitorial company?
That's an interesting journey, I would have to say, because initially I wasn't so sure I was ready to give that up. When Chris approached me and said, Stacy, I'd really like for us to own our own business.
And Chris is your husband.
Yes.
Let's interject that, of course.
Yes. I would like for us to own our own business, and I'd like for us to do it together. And I said, I really have a passion for what I'm doing. He said, I think that we can make a go of this, Stacy. So I said, as a dutiful wife, that we would make a run for it. And it has been, at times, God and I have conversations about, all right, I think you were supposed to be a numbers person, Stacy. Now you're a people person. How are you making this transition? And God says, I'll provide. And I say, yes, sir. And we move right on. And I have received, I believe, Jeremy, so many more blessings by making the journey that I have made now and being in a people business like we are.
And you mentioned move. I mean, you physically moved, so you live in downtown Memphis, and you moved your family strategically, obviously, to be closer to where the action was and is for your business. Share with us about that dynamic of relocating your business, but also relocating your family. I mean, your family and your business are very intertwined.
Yes, there's really no separation for us. Our children have grown up in the business, not from the work standpoint, but from around the kitchen table. And so moving into the heart of Memphis was an interesting conversation with them initially because they had grown up. We had moved from Lake Charles, Louisiana to Columbus, Mississippi after starting the business in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And so we were still in a smaller town, and we said, all right, the business is migrating north, so we have to migrate north. So guys, we're heading north, and we started thinking we were going to be in the North Mississippi area, but we found that we couldn't live two lives. We couldn't live a social life and a family life and then have a business life separate. So we said, guys, are you in for it? And they said, we'll make a run. And we, as a family, decided to move into the heart of downtown. And we treated it as an adventure. I was sort of a little... I don't know what you would call it, but I worked the system a little bit, maybe, Jeremy, because when we were starting, I'd say, oh, let's go to the bicycle shop downtown and take your bicycles to be fixed. Oh, let's go to Memphis College of Art and take a couple of classes on the weekend.
You were dipping their toe in the water.
I was. And let's eat downtown for lunch. And so I kept creating all of these events that were fun, and they'd start saying, well, I want to go back. Well, then why don't we just live down there? And
nice.
Then we did.
Well, hey, that's smart, though. I mean, that's in terms of getting your family to buy in, that's a smart move. So share with us about, you mentioned the people business, and you are in the people business, and you and I have conversations often in terms of the opportunities, but also some of the challenges, and especially things like transportation, which we might not think of. But in your line of work, it's extremely important for your family, so to speak, your workers, to be able to have access to bus routes, to be able to get to work on time. So give listeners a little bit of an idea. When I say ServiceMaster by Stratos, talk about the work you do, and then we'll dive into some of the things that make it interesting.
Okay, well, ServiceMaster by Stratos is a contract janitorial service. We service business and industry, and our major business is in the Memphis area. And our service partners can be full-time or they could be part-time, where they work a full-time job somewhere else and they want to, say, buy a second car, put a child through college, and they will want supplemental income, or maybe be able to put money away for retirement. So we have both types of service partners, who we call, that's our employee, because they're partners in service to our customer. And they come from all walks of life too. And we have young service partners that are just starting out of high school. And this is where they need to be to get the job skills that they need to move on to another job. We have those that have children in school and they're trying to supplement, and those that are retirees that said, all right, I'm not ready to just sit on the couch. And then we have, as far as the variety on the transportation side, some that own their own vehicles, but then there are a lot that depend on that public transportation or bicycles or walking. So it's really important when we start trying to place people in different customers' facilities to service them is to try to get a right fit. Because even when you're on a bus route, it doesn't mean that your shift will end when the buses are still running.
Right.
Or there's proper lighting to walk to that bus stop at 11 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night. So there are a lot of different concerns that we have to have as we start placing people to be able to serve our customers.
And talk about from your perspective as the president and CEO, but even coming from an engineering background where technology is so pervasive. You've been very, very good at using technology, leveraging technology for your business. Even when you look at your office in the historic Lowenstein building, I mean, the way it's kind of laid out, the way it's structured, you're just very smart the way you go about business. What's been one or two of the things that when you say, this is why we're successful outside of the people, what do you think are some of those moves that have made you successful?
Well, I think you're right on the technology side. We have tried to embrace it, whether it's technology to help improve our speed and when we're cleaning a facility, or our communication with our people. I think that's one of the biggest struggles in business when you have such a dispersed workforce, because they're not all under one roof. They're all around town. And it may be we work in a facility where there's a single person at night for only 3 hours. How do you reach out and touch them? Technology is enabling us to do that. Whether it's a smartphone that they have, whether it's an iPad or a Mac Air that our supervisors or our managers have, we have started connecting the dots and connecting our people. And a lot of what we're doing now is mobile training and being able to take that training and have it uniformly throughout the organization and be able to do it on iPads and have that up close and personal is really, I think, making a difference for our organization.
The one thing that I personally love about you is you care. You care about people. And so it's no secret why you are successful and why you've been able to be so successful over these many years. And the perfect example of this, and this switches over to the philanthropic side of what you do, is you work with homeless individuals in your area of downtown, and you find ways to give them jobs, and one of which is adopting a dog park. Share a little bit about your experience in terms of moving downtown, but related to working with these homeless individuals, having a heart for the homeless.
It was sort of an organic progression when we moved downtown. I believe everybody is worth acknowledging. So as we moved downtown and we started walking to dinner or walking to the store, we would pass these men, most of them are men, that are out in the parks and sitting along the benches, and we'd say hello, and they'd say hello back. And then they would sort of try to play a trick on us or panhandle, maybe some of them. Others would just look down, and we kept saying hello. And then a relationship started developing. The children started speaking to, I call them my guys now. Sometimes I say I have too many men in my life. But each one of them has a different story. And some of them can stay out of trouble, and some of them can't stay out of trouble. But what we've been able to do, like you mentioned with the dog park, is be able to start teaching them how to come to work on time, how to earn a wage. And it's not a lot, but it helps with their self-esteem. And then we have started now. One of the gentlemen one day said, do you by chance have a way for me to wash clothes? And I went, oh, this is an aha moment here. Of course, we're a janitorial business. We wash mops and rags all the time. I said, would you like to wash your clothes? Yes, I would. Very much so. And so now the gentlemen come in and we don't wash it for them. They have to learn how to work the washer and dryer, and they wash their clothes. In an hour, they come back and take their clothes out of the washer. They put them in the dryer. And so it's been a huge, I think, difference in their lives because we say hello, we treat them as human beings, we have casual conversations. And I've got some of my men like JR. JR will come in and he'll say, do you have any candy today? Or how about a Gatorade today? And I'd say, sure, JR, we've got a Gatorade for you. And then we have the ability with the Memphis Mission Union to have the coupons. And we have been trying to educate all our friends that come downtown about the coupons, because we've got some professional panhandlers that move in on the weekends and like to stay and try to work the crowd. And the way you take care of that is to have those coupons from the mission. And instead of $7, you say, oh, but I have something better. I have a coupon that's 3 meals and a night stay. Oh, no, I don't want that. Okay, then it's really not a coupon for the mission you're wanting today. And they move on.
But you've learned, though, through the process of paying your men, that sometimes cash isn't the best answer, that in many times it's another way to get to the same end result. So share a little bit about just that experience of maybe cash isn't always the best thing.
Absolutely, Jeremy. It took a little bit to be wise, and so now when somebody will ask about money, I'll say, I don't do cash. We will do meals, we will do the vouchers, we'll do all of those things, but never cash for them, because we all have vices. Some are very visible and some aren't. And a lot of my men have problems with substance abuse. And to give them money is to promote that opportunity, and I don't need to do that. And so we find other avenues of whether it is keeping it for them to buy clothes or to buy meals and things like that, we have found just works so much better. And it's been amazing how the men, and this is in addition to the Memphis 100 most vulnerable, then they've been able to place some of my men, and the change in them to know that they have a place to put their head on a pillow at night and then come have clean clothes, and it's just been transforming for some of them.
How has that affected your children? To see that, to witness that, to be a part of it? I mean, I've got to imagine, especially at an early age, to see, I mean, I grew up in a family that had an open door policy, and at all hours, people that were down on their luck would come through, and to see your parents genuinely just helping people out of the goodness of their heart, not related to what they do with their business, but just being there for somebody else. It definitely changed me and my brother. I mean, my brother is a Marine serving our country, and you would look at the service aspect. It obviously played a very important role in who we are today. So I've got to believe for your children to see that, to be a part of that, has to mean something to them. What would you say, just from a mother's perspective, has it had any impact on them, you think?
I do think it has had an impact. They are very comfortable with a wide spectrum of people that they interact with. They have no problem sitting on a park bench and having a conversation with someone that just needed a listening ear for the day. They have no problem telling someone, no, I think there's something better that you can do with yourself. And they don't, the lines are blurred. They see no difference in an individual, which is such a blessing for me, because that means that they really understand who a person really is, and that we all make mistakes, and we call our business a business of second chances. And I think they live their life that every person they meet has a right for a second chance. And so let me find out what they are about and what I can do myself for them.
Fantastic. I want to switch gears a little bit, but it's related. You mentioned kind of the in-kind philosophy, and that's another area that I think you really take it to a whole new level. Many times you hear, one of the trends in corporate philanthropy is looking at all of your assets, being able to use your conference center to give to a nonprofit, using trucks or whatever. But in your case, it's your service providers. Your service providers are a great avenue for you to be able to not only bless their lives, but to work with nonprofits and really help them. Share a little bit about the in-kind side of the work you do with ServiceMaster by Stratos.
Well, it's really interesting how that evolved, Jeremy. We wanted to be active in the community and we wanted to give back, but as a small to medium-sized business, there wasn't always the ability monetarily to give to organizations. So when someone would approach us about an event, say Memphis Charitable Foundation, we would say, do you need any cleaning before the event or maybe after the event is over? And they would say, oh, yes, we do. We have to pay for that. And we were able to say, well, what if we took that burden off of you? And it was met with a lot of excitement. And so we started trying to do that for more organizations in town. And you are correct. What it does for us is it gives us the ability to participate, and our service partners also, because our people don't always see the work that is going on in the community, because some people are working a full-time day job, that part-time night job, and they're barely making it. And this way, when we are paying them to service an event like that, they get to participate and feel like they're giving of themselves too, just like the participants who have paid to be a part of it. And so it is really just warms your heart. You look at it and say, now they know about others that are trying to make a difference too in the Memphis market.
And when you encompass all that, when you take all that together, what makes you the happiest? When you look at the impact that you're having through your company, especially on the people here, what puts a smile on your face? What makes you want to wake up every morning and say, you know what, I want to roll out of bed and do this because I love it. It's making a difference in this way. What's that smile?
I would have to say it's culture, Jeremy. It's the ability to communicate that those that work alongside me, that are part of the company and those that we touch, that we have ability to make a difference, that we truly care, that integrity and credibility mean something, that a man's word really still means something in today's environment, and being able to communicate that and then see it emulated in my people every day, that's what makes a difference for me.
What do you think when you look at your parents? What do you think what do you think they would say in terms of, we're proud of Stacy because of this? What do you think they would say?
Now, my daddy's outlook would be, you didn't settle, Stacy, and I'm proud of you for not doing that. My mama would say, you didn't forget where you came from and what you really are. So I think that would be it. Nice.
So let's switch gears once again. You're known for the love of scuba diving. So give us a little bit of, one, just why you love scuba diving, and two, what have been some of your favorite adventures?
Well, you are right. Gravity's not my friend, so I'm better in the water than I am on the ground. And so I love to be under the water, and in the ocean is my favorite place. It is so quiet, and the ability to experience new and exciting things, it's just, the ocean calls me all the time. And I would have to say, right now I'm in the mode of cenote adventures. They are underwater rivers in Mexico, and it's just amazing to see that light filter in, to see the green embers, and to experience that different part of the world in Mexico, and what they have had an opportunity to always adventure into has been awesome for me. So I'd have to say right now the cenotes. Now blue holes are pretty awesome too in the Bahamas, so it's sort of a toss-up, but I just say anytime that I can get in that salty water again is where I would be. And I would have to say maybe that's what you were talking about earlier about the Mississippi Delta. I'd have to say that adventure must have continued in my adult life with scuba diving.
So do you have screensavers and pictures and things like that when you're either stressed out or you say, I need a break, and you can pull it up and see the pictures of scuba diving?
Yes,
nice.
I do.
When you look at scuba diving, and obviously you mentioned that it's very quiet, it's peaceful, that's how you like to recharge. How else do you like to recharge? I mean, obviously you live in a very fast pace when you talk about juggling family, work, all the responsibilities, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second, but how else do you like to recharge? How do you recharge your batteries?
What I have been doing lately, which is such a blessing, is just taking a walk along the river with Chris and the dog. We had not done that forever, and we started that back about a year ago, and it's really interesting. It's just like scuba diving. It just used to be Daddy and Mom, and then oldest child said, well, can I walk along with you? Next thing I know, the next child, can I throw a football and walk with you? So it's been pretty neat to see how what I thought might be a solitary activity has become a family event when everybody is around.
So how do you balance family, work, all those responsibilities? Because when you're for you and your husband, which are both in the business, trying to separate that in and of itself, but then living downtown, working, it's very much your life 24/7. So talk about how you create separation and how you create balance.
It's really interesting. I will never say I have balance. I've just learned to have all of those lines intersect when they need to intersect, Jeremy, in a way. Because we have a business that runs 24/7. So we have a management team or service partners that might need us. And when there's a need, we have to meet the needs. And so we are we can let our guard down a little bit, but then we have to be ready to step it up if they need us. But where we find that we have sort of struck a balance is by integrating family in things like that, like the walk. All of a sudden, because mom and dad were doing something, they were drawn to it. And when they're drawn to it, then you draw them in and take those precious moments. I like to say that I live moment by moment, and being able to live moment by moment gives me an opportunity to savor those moments. And in savoring those moments, I don't miss time. So I try to make sure I'm in the moment, whether it is a college-age student that I have that comes in at 9:45 at night and wants to tell me about his day, and mom's up till 11 o'clock. I'm in the moment, because you don't know how long you're going to have those moments. And so I think that's what I have learned as far as the balance. And when I'm in the office, I am there for my people. So I think that that's one of my keys now. That multitasking thing that people talked about was so great. I was always a little bit leery of it because I have a high concentration propensity.
Right.
I'm sort of glad that I didn't jump on that bandwagon now, because it has proved itself in the end that you have to be there. You have to set the cell phone aside. Then you come back to it, and now sometimes you might live like me and live a life of an apology and say, I'm sorry, I'll get back to you, but I like to joke that what I really need to do when I'm in the office, I need to have an out-of-office message and say, unfortunately, I'm in the office right now and I'll be unable to return your call because I'm focused on my people at the time. And so I think that that's the key for me, is that I can focus on those that are in front of me, whether it's family or business, to get the maximum amount of time for those moments and then be able to move on.
How do you, as a woman executive, you hear it a lot where, and obviously even just your background working with the oil companies and being out on the rigs and things along those lines, where you really had to toughen up, and emotion in many cases gets set aside. On your end, though, being the president and CEO, you have to be tough. You have to deal with things like firing someone or letting them go, or having a tough conversation about productivity or their work ethic or things along those lines. And then maybe 30 minutes later, or maybe even 5 minutes later, you've got to be out to a soccer game or something with your child, right? And be in the moment. How do you manage the difficulties and the challenges of working in a professional world with people, to then flipping over and being a loving wife and mom?
And that is very difficult because I'm very logical, and logic overrides emotion with me. And so in business, that's great. That's great. But then when you flip the switch to family, then I'll have my children say, Mom, that's enough life lessons for the day. And so the children in ways help me decompress and make the switch back and to the family side. And most people would say, I've got to switch from family to business. But in my life, it's been just the opposite. And that's where family has to be able to understand, wait, Mom's in this mode. Let's see what
Mom's in business mode. Let's get her out.
And maybe we need to turn on some music right now. And so they've got these subtle little hints that'll say, all right, time to switch.
So what would you say as a mother are your proudest, I don't want to say moments, but just what makes you proud of your children and your family?
Jeremy, for each child it's different. For my oldest, she's an industrial engineer, has her MBA, and she is professional. And she knows how to chart a course, and she knows how to execute on it. And she has got a lot of self-discipline. And so I'm so proud that she was able to take that and see it to fruition. And I'm marrying her off in April, and she will be running her own household and have it all for her to choose the rest of her life. life. My middle one, I am so proud of him that he has continued seeking his passions, and he has found what I think is his passion, which will carry him far, because he's not one that's going to try to climb the corporate ladder, but what he wants to do is to just experience life to its fullest. And for my youngest, I'm so proud of him because you can set him in a room and he can read the mood of the room and then be what the room needs him to be. And so he has already realized a talent that he has that I don't at all, and he has been able to start developing that. So I think that's my proudest of all of my three children, is they haven't tried to fit themselves in a box, and they each are trying to find their own way and their talents and then develop them to their fullest.
And Boy Scouts of America, Chickasaw Council here locally, Eagle Scout, also those are the things that go along with this too, correct?
That's correct. The middle child is an Eagle Scout, Benjamin, and he was, really that's amazing that he made it all the way, because we had moved so many times and he had moved with so many troops. But that talks about the leadership in the Boy Scouts, that they were able to keep him in it until he succeeded. And now his younger brother, Caleb, is in Scouts and is doing real well, and he wants to do what his big brother did now and prove that he can become an Eagle Scout too.
And when you look at it from your involvement, you're on the board, you're also on the board, you're one of the commissioners with the Memphis City Beautiful Commission. And give us an idea, when you talk about the kind of the service side, being on the board, serving in the community, why that's so important for you personally?
There always needs to be an avenue to give back, either professionally or personally. And on the professional side, you might say that the Boy Scouts is, but it's really personal to me because it affects my family and the opportunity of so many children in the Memphis market, and the ability to raise up the next generation that is going to take Memphis to the next level is very important to me. And the same with Memphis City Beautiful and being on the commission. It is so important that Memphis set its foot forward for those that are coming into the community and those that are already in the community, and setting an example of what we want to be in the future, whether it's the physical structure or the people side of it with the Boy Scouts. So it gives me an opportunity in both avenues, whether it's the physical of Memphis or it's the people side of it.
What's next? What's next for you? What's next for your family? I mean, obviously you've got the wedding coming up, but what's next?
It's been an interesting conversation in the business because I've chaired a national council for the ServiceMaster franchises for the last 2 years, and I've been on the council since 2008. I rotate off in May, so all of these big events are happening at the same time. I told the team that they might want to kick me out of the company by the end of the summer because I'll be all in their business again, because I've been having to divide some of my attentions. So it's going to be really interesting to see where our focuses are going forward. I think that I'm going to not only focus on the technology and ramp it up even more, but the question becomes, where do I plug in and where do I plug the company in the next phase as we going into third and fourth quarter of this year?
So what do you hope your legacy will be here in our city?
Jeremy, I guess I would have to say, if someone said she cared and she made a difference in my life, that would be what I wanted to be remembered.
Well, I can say that you definitely do care, and you have made a difference in my life. So you are a change maker. Stacy McCall, thank you very much for coming on the ChangeMakers podcast.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you for listening to the ChangeMakers podcast. To learn more about our guests and to share your story of leading by example and creating change, visit us online at thelpbc.com. Connect with us online using @thelpbc or follow the conversation using the hashtag ChangeMakers. Now think big, start small, and act now. Be a changemaker.